If we are going to sit down and have a discussion about creating a safer America, and we're going to debate the steps that need to be taken in order to create a safer America, the reality of it is that taking away the guns of the American people would actually be one of the last things that you would do, as opposed to the first. If the only kind of violence I had to worry about was my kid wandering into my bedroom, finding my gun and accidentally shooting himself with it, then yes, we may be at a point in society where we can lay aside our Second Amendment rights. However, that is not the world, that is not the country, that is not the society that we live in. Currently, we live in a world that is threatened with invasion. Just a few short months ago, we were talking about us potentially being on the cusp of World War III. China could invade Taiwan, Russia has invaded Ukraine, and everybody loves Ukraine, right? Everybody's been cheering on Ukraine. The left has been cheering on Ukraine. But what did the Ukrainian government do? They literally told the men to stay behind, and they were arming the general population and saying, we're going to stay behind and fight for our freedom and fight for our country. The government was handing out weapons to average, everyday citizens. And everybody loved it. Everybody loved it when it was for Ukraine. Now, the United States has just taken it one step further, and they actively allow the population to be armed. It is one of the best deterrents to invasion. If by some chance our enemies were able to surpass our military and land on American soil, they would be staring down the barrel of millions of gun owners and have to fight for every inch of red state America, because that's how many people have guns in the United States. And as for the things that are happening in our own country, we have a human trafficking problem that nobody really wants to talk about, mental illness problem. We have BLM running around city to city, burning, destroying, looting, whatever they want. We have riots going on at our Capitol during our election cycle. We are experiencing a dramatic uptick in crime. And the most intelligent answer, the best answer that the left can come up with, the best answer that the left can give us is, hey, now would be a great time to take away everybody's ability to defend themselves. And mass shootings going on all over the place. And they want to take away our guns while the country is in this state. And here's one thing you have to realize. One of the biggest keys to gun control is law enforcement. Law enforcement would have to fill the gap that the Second Amendment would leave. They would have to be more invasive, more resourceful, and more ready to deal with problems and issues and violence that would arise on a day-to-day basis. But you can look at what happened in Uvalde, and it's really kind of discouraging because people look at Uvalde as an example as to why we should have gun control. But when you look at the information and you look at everything that happened, really it's telling me that we should keep a hold of our guns, because the police department, the law enforcement in Uvalde, they were completely unprepared to deal with that situation. It took them more than an hour to get that situation under control. So that was an hour that those students and those teachers were in danger. That could be an hour of a psychopath being barricaded in your home with your family. That could be an hour of you trapped in a store with an active shooter. They were not ready to deal with that situation. And you want me to give up my guns in the face of such incompetence? It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. And I am not an advocator for defunding the police. That's something that the left also wants to do. They want us to give up our Second Amendment rights, but they also want to defund the police at the same time. So that just tells you what kind of agenda they have. That tells you what kind of intelligence that they have. It makes absolutely no sense. Look, if you are a if you're an advocate for gun control, really the best advice that I can give you right now, while our country and the world is in the state that it's in, is tell the American government to get the country in freaking order. And then maybe we can talk about gun control. Maybe we can talk about giving up our firearms. But when you have all of these things, when you have all of these tragedies, all of this violence, all this uncertainty going around, you're asking me to give up my ability to defend myself? It's not going to happen. I will give the left credit, though. The left is very good at claiming the short-term moral high ground. And from this high ground, they try to shame and guilt their political enemies into doing what they want, into forsaking their stance on the Second Amendment. From this moral high ground, they are trying to demonize the American people to the point where we are willing to give up our firearms. Because they are able to create so much urgency and put so much pressure on people. You know, I'm sure that there are gun owners around America right now that have had guns their entire lives, have always been safe with them, have always enjoyed them, enjoyed hunting, enjoyed shooting for competition, or maybe even people that carry for self-defense. They are looking at all this urgency and all of this guilt and all of this shame and all this demonization that the media and the left are producing right now, and they're going, man, I don't want to have to deal with this. I don't want people shaming me and demonizing me and guilt tripping me everywhere I go because I own a weapon. And they are contemplating giving up their Second Amendment rights. But the reason I say it is the short-term moral high ground is because everybody is focused on the micro. Everybody looks at the shooting that happened in Uvalde and they say we need to do whatever it takes, and we need to have an extreme reaction right now. We need to do something extreme right now to put it into this. And it sounds good. It sounds politically correct. And I'm not saying that nothing should be done, but everybody is focused on the micro. If you take one big step backwards and you start looking at the world around us, you start looking at the state of our country, you start looking at everything going on, you will realize that now is actually one of the most important times to own a firearm. Now is one of the most important times to be able to defend your family with so much uncertainty going on. I encourage you to step away, take one big step backwards, and look at the macro. Don't look at the micro. Look at the macro, and you will see why it is still an absolute necessity for the American people to be armed, for the American people to retain their Second Amendment rights.